Hi, and welcome to the President's Forum podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Smith. Our guest today is Bob Collins. He's a senior advisor in the Office of the President for Western Governors University. Bob has been a pioneering force in reimagining how institutions approach student financial aid, most notably through WGU's groundbreaking Responsible Borrowing Initiative. With over 3 decades of experience in financial aid administration, Bob has dedicated his career to making higher education more affordable and more accessible while promoting responsible student borrowing practices. It seems so simple. It is so simple, but it is groundbreaking in higher education to do the things that Bob has done and to save the hundreds of millions of dollars that WGU has saved for students. That is the conversation that we have teed up for you. Let's get to that now. Bob, great to see you this morning. Thanks for making time to catch up with us.
Great. Thanks. Good morning.
Hey, the focus this month at the President's Forum is affordability in higher education. And honestly, I don't think I know anyone in the country who is more qualified to talk about this particular issue than you, Bob Collins. So it's great to have you.
Oh, thanks for those kind words.
Okay. I want to start big picture, and then we'll get a little more granular. So
right.
At the big picture level, tell us, give us an overview. What has happened to student debt over the past, 10, 15 years? What can you tell us on the trajectory? And then there are a couple follow-up questions I want to have there, but let's start with that one.
All right. Yeah. Quick overview. Federal student loan balances have skyrocketed over the past 2 decades, really. I mean, currently there's 43 million Americans with the federal student loan debt of $1.7 trillion. That's with a T. That's current as of today. 10 years ago in 2014, the outstanding federal student loan balance was $1.2 trillion. And in 2006, it was $520 billion. So you can see the staggering increase over the last 2 decades. It's, I think, an average annual growth rate of about 13% since 2007.
And that is just not sustainable.
No.
So before we get into what we can do to address that, what are the root causes of that? I know at WGU, you talk root causes all the time. Yeah. If you had to diagnose the root causes of this crisis, what would you say they are?
A couple of things, I think. First, in 2006, Congress approved the Grad Plus loans up to the full cost of attendance, which is basically the direct and indirect cost. Direct cost being tuition and fees, and then the indirect cost being meals and housing and transportation. So there was no annual limit on the amount that graduate students could borrow. They could borrow up to the full cost of attendance. Now, this is a little concerning because on the Grad Plus loan, there's very little credit underwriting. There's no FICO score. There's no debt to income ratio. Essentially, no adverse credit, such as not more than 90 days past due on payments. And as long as you don't have any adverse credit, you're eligible to borrow as up to the cost of attendance.
Does that cover every institution? I mean, WGU tuition is a lot different than, Ivy League elite tuition. Is there no difference in those loans for the institution that you attend?
No, up to the cost of attendance. And unfortunately, as a result, I believe that the post-baccalaureate programs, the tuition increased significantly over the last 2 decades. That's clear evidence of that.
Yeah. Okay. So the root cause here could possibly be as simple as students are borrowing too much money for the education that they're receiving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you a second example here, Wes. States are required to have a balanced budget every year. And so, the largest buckets of state appropriations would include like education and healthcare and transportation, right? Roads and bridges, security, prisons. That's basically where the state funds are invested back into the state. So in challenging times, at the public universities and in challenging times, there's difficult decisions to reduce state expenditures. I mean, consider in 2008, the economic downturn, right? Those were really tough times for a lot of the states. In 2020, the pandemic, right? that was a challenging time. And I think that with the CARES Act, right, there was a governor's emergency relief fund, the education
Hmm.
emergency relief funds. So that was kind of offset during the pandemic. But coming up, the demographic cliff is declining enrollment. So enrollments are going to be declined for two reasons. Simply, the number of high school graduates is lower. That's the demographic cliff. But I
Hmm.
think students are beginning to question the value of a higher education, right? And so that might be, a changing in the enrollment patterns because of all the noise about the student loan debt. I think students are having real questions about the value of a higher ed, and maybe they just want to do, skills-based economy. They want to get a credential or certificate. So I
It's a nasty cycle we find ourselves in where students are looking at these debt levels and then they're saying, oof, higher education may not be worth it. I don't know if I want to incur all this debt but we've put them in that position by, making this financial decision so uninformed by metrics, uninformed by what is this going to look like when you graduate? What's your income level going to look like? Are you going to improve your income? What do your income gains look like? And then, of course, compare that to how much debt are you taking on? The real questions have to be asked. Can you afford a private education at an elite institution to become a teacher or to become, to go into, honorable professions that may not be able to sustain your student loan repayment obligations. So anyway, there's some issues that we have to think about. We have to talk about. I want to know. I know you have some of these answers. So let's start down that road. What has WGU done to help students deal with burdensome debt?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, indeed. Just to follow up on that, I believe we're going to foresee additional closures, mergers, and acquisitions in the higher education space. It's not sustainable, as you suggested earlier.
Right.
So
Right.
what have we done at WGU? Well, it was simple. We recommend students borrow only what they need.
That's radical.
Right.
Tell us more about that crazy idea.
Well, it's a simple concept, and basically we're using behavioral economics, right? So it's a nudge theory. So
Okay.
in financial aid, we have an acronym for everything. So this was the Responsible Borrowing Initiatives. RBI is the program. So essentially, this began in 2013 is when we started this program. So what we did, think about this: a student fills out the federal application for student aid, FAFSA. They do that one time per year. And so while they do that, it's time to get their focused attention. It's a once a year event. Let's get them focused on making good decisions. So when they come in and apply for financial aid at Western Governors University, what we do is we personalize the offer to the student. And we use gaming technology. We make it fun, right? I mean, you got their attention one
Right.
time a year, make a good decision. So we created My Financial Aid Plan. It's personalized and it uses gaming technology. And
Okay.
basically what we do is we recommend students borrow their unmet direct cost. So what that means is your tuition and fees, minus your grants and gift aid, scholarships. The difference is what we recommend you take in loans.
Okay.
And remarkably, 2/3 of our students accept our recommendation, right? It was
Right.
simple. But here's the key on that is that when you're going through this process, you can we show you your prior debt from previous colleges or previous terms at WGU. So we show your prior debt, we show you the current amount that you want to borrow, and then your projected amount to graduation.
Okay.
What we're going to show you is your total cost and what your monthly payment will be when you graduate. So you're making an informed decision.
Right.
While you're in that application, you can, it's interactive. So you can turn the dial. What if I borrowed less? What would my monthly payment be? Maybe I can
love it.
afford $50 a month. Maybe I
Right.
can apply for more scholarships. So it gets the interaction with the student to be engaged for that one time a year when you got to make a decision on how to pay for college.
Right.
Keep it fun.
Okay, so what are the metrics that you follow on determining whether this program has been successful?
Well, I told you 2/3 of our students accepted our recommendation.
Okay.
That was pretty simple. That's
And how much money
oh,
did that save them?
yeah.
Or how much money as an institution have you saved in using this since you said 2013, right?
Yes. In
Okay.
2013, the average debt at graduation for our undergraduate students, average debt at graduation was $21,000. I mean,
Okay.
that's very manageable and
Right.
more than the national average by far.
Right.
But in 2024, just this last year, the average debt at for undergraduate at graduation is 15,700.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
over those 12 years, it's reduced, more about 25%. Now, when you look at WGU scale, that's hundreds of millions of federal student loan debt reduction.
Yeah, you have to be close to like a $500 million in that time with the scale of students that you
Yeah,
have.
hundreds of millions. Yeah, I stopped doing the math. It's just people just hear that number and it's like they must think I misspoke.
Well, and this is very interesting because what you're telling me, the rough numbers that I heard there was from like 21,000 to
Yeah,
15,000. A decrease in thousands of dollars of debt per student.
per student.
This is happening at a time when the national trend and inflation in higher education is going exactly the opposite direction, right? So if you followed the national trend at WGU and it was 21,000 in debt, coming into 2013, where would we be now if you just followed the national trends, right? You would be
Mm.
you're saving a significant amount of money to students by doing this.
Yeah, I know the students appreciate that.
Right.
I mean, it's just simply, making an informed decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell me this. Since you've been doing this, and like we talked about when you initially introduced this, I mean, it's so I hate to say this, but this is innovation in higher education. I mean, as simple as this sounds, of what we do, our role in this is we share information with students and we help them understand what the impact of borrowing is, and then we suggest that they don't borrow as much. That is pretty innovative in higher education. What have you received feedback on this? Have other institutions looked to say, hey, how do we model this? Has the department talked to you about this? Tell us what the feedback has been.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as a financial aid professional, it's just frustrating. The headline news was a student debt crisis, and that was 10, 12 years ago
Hmm.
and further. And so, I'm just, as a professional, I'm thinking, we got to do something about this, right? And so we just, no laws were changed, no regulations changed, just a simple business process change. And our students accepted our recommendation
Right.
overwhelmingly. And so what we did then is we took that on the road, our responsible borrowing initiatives. I went out to talk to all of my colleagues at the state and regional and national level. Just simple process changes can make a difference. And so we were out there promoting this what we have done, and you too can do it at your institution.
Right.
And in fact, the program is an award-winning program. The National Association of Financial Aid Administrators gave us a gold medal. The Western Cooperative Education Technology got a WOW award there, the American
Yeah.
Association of University Administrators Exemplary Award. So it's an award-winning model.
Right.
And in fact, this Tennessee state legislature adopted this similar RBI concept in all of Tennessee public higher education.
Right.
In Indiana and other states, they have an annual student loan notice to borrowers. So you can see we're getting some traction about helping students be aware of their personal responsibility, keeping them informed.
Right.
As far as the Department of Ed is concerned, yeah, they were intrigued by this. Probably 4-6 years ago, the Federal Student Aid Office developed an annual student loan acknowledgment. It's exactly what the RBI process was designed to do.
Right.
Now, the annual student loan acknowledgement came out and available in about 2019, 2020. Well, then we had a pandemic.
Right.
And that really disrupted and put it on the sideline. After the pandemic, it was FAFSA simplification, and there was other priorities focusing on student debt cancellation and those policy proposals. So anyhow, that's what the Department of Ed has done. But let me tell you more about the annual student loan acknowledgement, because I'd really like to see that come back into
Okay.
play now. It helps students make an informed decision to borrow wisely, right? So what it does students will acknowledge their salary and debt estimates for their chosen program of study, and information about how student loan interest rate works. So you can find in the college scorecard, you can find the institution's average median debt and median salary by program of study. That information is already available on the college scorecard. Look it up. Check
Right.
out your school's programs, average earnings and average debt at
Right.
graduation. So every time on the annual student loan acknowledgement, every time you come through, you're going to acknowledge that you understand your responsibility to pay your loan. You're going to understand how much you owe and how much more you are eligible to borrow. It's also talks about interest rates and repayment options. It's just, once a year information to help you make good decisions. It just seems logical.
Bob, this is the most simple solution to save. If you were to implement this across the higher ed environment, if WGU has saved hundreds of millions of dollars, think of the savings you would have if every institution of higher education implemented RBI. I mean, you'd have billions of dollars worth of savings.
Well, I think that, yes, billions of dollars.
Yeah,
You know,
billions.
yeah,
Yeah, you would. I mean, it would be a tremendous savings just by knowing.
yeah. And if you think about it, bring back the annual student loan acknowledgement, make that more prominent. In fact, there's some traction in Congress. There's the College Cost Reduction Act was
Right.
introduced, passed through the House committee earlier this year, and it might go to the full floor later this month
Yeah.
in December, right? In the
Right.
final weeks of the 118th session, that may be something to vote on the full floor in the House. But at a minimum, it'll be a marker for the Senate in the 119th session, right? So
Right.
the College Cost Reduction Act adopts a lot of these similarities about affordability, accountability, right? That's what it's all about. But it also has some performance-based measures based on student outcomes.
Right.
It has some risk sharing. Why should we have programs with high costs and low earnings?
Right.
People got to have skin in the game.
I mean, once you get to sharing the information,
Yeah.
it really leads you to questions on, shouldn't our finance be a little bit different for different degrees? Isn't the risk a little bit different if you incur debt for this kind of a path versus that kind of a path? So, I mean, I do agree that there are a million ways that you can use this information, and that the better data we have on income gains, and the better data we have on completion rates, and the better data on completion time, things like that, they can all change everything. But the first step seems super obvious to me, and that is implement what WGU has implemented and share information on debt, on student debt. Don't let students walk away thinking, I mean, at this point, I think a lot of students go into higher ed and they think, what do I care if I rack up the debt? It's going to be forgiven.
That's
Right?
That's unfortunate, but
Yeah, it's dangerous.
true.
It's dangerous that consumers are thinking like that right now, because they hear so much talk about that, and they hear that, oh no, it can't be paid back. I mean, we have to get that under control, and I think this basic information sharing and education
Yeah.
is the easiest first step.
Yeah, making informed decisions, and you're right. It shouldn't take an act of Congress to do something about it. We can do
Right.
that at the
Right.
college level, at the university level. We can take these process improvements and just adopt them. But
Right.
I think knowing that the College Cost Reduction Act is likely to move forward in the 119th Congress, it's time for college presidents to engage
Right.
in the congressional process, and there's some pros and cons to the legislation as always, but with more input, I think there's more good than bad that comes from that.
Yeah, it's time. It's time for action on this issue. We can't just continue down the path that's shown us I mean, just the trajectory that we talked about as we started this conversation. It's unsustainable. Everybody knows it. It's time for action, and the action doesn't have to be revolutionary. all it has to be is starting out with, hey, let's share this information better. Let's have one conversation every year with students, and let's suggest that they try to mitigate the financial pain in their future by making good decisions now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It also helps that your tuition is very, very reasonable.
Or community colleges. And
yeah.
as well.
Well, Bob, thanks for joining us. Thanks for talking through this important issue with us. I'm sure that as affordability issues continue to pop up in higher ed, you're on a short list, and we'll be back in touch to get more information on those issues.
Great. Happy to participate. Thanks, Wes.
Thanks, Bob.